Welcome everybody to the Raptors 2K podcast brought to you by Uber Eats. We are back for episode number 3, but I gotta toss this Shane real quick. Shane, what's been going on? We've been gone for a little bit, buddy. Give the people a little update on that.
Yeah, what's up, Phil? Good to reconnect with you, man. It's we had a little bit of a
Of
hiatus. You know, when you're getting a new content series off the ground, sometimes there are some speed bumps here and there, but I think that's behind us now. And looking at the schedule, we're probably going to be recording like 2 or 3 of these a month for the next few months going forward. And it's coming at the right time because the 2K League is just starting to heat up. We got a great guest today, ToXsiK, 4-year NBA 2K League veteran and the godfather of the iBallEmpire. So looking forward to chatting with him. And it's been a big week. We just had our expansion draft. Before that, we had the draft lottery. I won't steal our thunder, but the Raptors did not fare as we had hoped we would in that draft lottery. But that's okay because we got a lot of talent. And while it may have affected our plans just a little bit, we still got a great strategy, I think, heading into the draft. So we'll talk about that. Player protections also happened in the 2K League, so we'll talk a little bit about who the Raptors protected here in a second. But Phil, I saw you've been out casting events again. I mean, it feels like the pandemic is behind us in the esports world now. Everyone's back on LAN. My favorite esport, Counter-Strike, just had a huge major. Almost doubled the record viewership. So esports are back and thriving. But why don't you let the listeners know what you've been up to?
For everything I go to, I'm always very cautiously optimistic because I understand we still have to have a certain level of caution and security with how we approach these events. So I've been having a good time. I'm masking up, I'm vaxxing, all the other fun stuff. So I feel comfortable going out and being able to get back into the esports world. Got a little bit of a break here coming up between now and in December, which is cool because obviously Thanksgiving is the thing I'm really focused on right now. But other than that, man, I'm good. I'm Gucci, and I'm just looking forward to chatting with our guest ToXsiK, who I know is eager to get in here as well.
Yeah, likewise. He's a league OG and someone I've had a great deal of respect for ever since. When you're in my role, you're always trying to size up character in the NBA 2K League, and Tox is oozing with character. He's the kind of guy you want in your franchise for sure. Well, I think it's that time where we order lunch. Given that the podcast is brought to us by Uber Eats, and the good people at Uber Eats bless us with a free meal every time we do one of these things.
Well, I don't know about you. I already plugged in. I'm doing pizza today.
Nice pizza. I was at. Go ahead.
Torture myself. Now I want to torture myself with some terrible terrible West Coast pizza. So that's what we're gonna do.
Yeah.
At least I know it'll be hot and ready thanks to Uber Eats.
It's Friday, so you can cheat a little. I was at the Maple Leaf game last night. For any of our listeners who don't know, that's our NHL team here in Toronto. And anytime the night runs late and I responsibly drink a few cocktails, I'm craving my local shawarma spot around here. It's like my go-to. It's been that way since high school. So I think I'm going to lock in and get myself some chicken shawarma.
Shawarma is pretty delicious. I give it up.
They do it 2 ways. I mean, you could get the traditional wrap, but they do it also on the rocks, which is on this delicious buttery rice, or on ice, which is more on a salad. I love on the rocks, but I still do have a few meetings after this, and it's going to put me into one of those food comas. So I'm probably going to do on ice.
Don't play around with the itis, bro. Don't play around with it. Tell people.
Yeah, it's too tempting when you have all these options at your fingertips on Uber Eats. It definitely tests my mental strength from time to time to be able to say no, my restraint. But I'm going to lock this in. And reminder, the Uber Pass. If you subscribe to the Uber Pass, you get free delivery, not only on food, but groceries, other things like alcohol. I'll abstain for the rest of the weekend, I think, again, after last night. But the Uber Pass hooks you up, and I'm super loyal. They don't pay me to say this. This was not part of the script, but I legit use Uber Eats exclusively, not only because I have the Uber Pass, but I also just now, I don't know if it's because of the Uber Pass or it's because I'm such a repeat customer, but I've got some sort of diamond status, and I get phone support. So when I've had, not that the issues come up very often, but whenever they do, I've got this awesome phone support that always sorts it out for me real quick. So I'm a huge fan of Uber Eats, and again, that's not because they pay me to say that.
I'm climbing my way up to that diamond status. I'll tell you that much. But for now, I'll let you handle that, Shane. That's clearly more your wheelhouse. Respectable, my man. Always about that life, for sure. But now that we have the orders placed, why don't we bring in the man of the hour, our guest, ToXsiK, waiting in the wings, ready to jump in here. Brother, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you guys. How's it going?
Oh, it's going fantastic, bro. Appreciate you coming through for episode 3 of the podcast. Hope everything is going well with you. If I can ask real quick, where are you at currently? Are you back home or are you like in your facility? What's going on?
I am back home in South Florida right now, so dealing with the hot weather. Everyone else is cold. I'm still like, we're barely cracking the 60s, man. But yeah, I'm back home in South Florida. So
Nice.
I'll be down there over the holidays talks, in the like the Naples, Marco Island area. I don't know if that's anywhere near you, but if so, we maybe we can link up.
it's more on the other coast.
Oh, okay.
I'm down near Miami, so I'm about an hour north of Miami or so.
Okay, well, I'll be there for a bachelor party next year, so maybe I'll hit you up for that.
All right, there we go. Yeah.
All right, what
Looking
the
forward
heck?
to
Hit
it.
me
Well,
up too,
dude,
man. I'll make a trip.
yeah, come out, Phil, man. We get to see you in person. It's been too many years. Talks, man. Like I said, already pump your tires a little bit, but 4-year 2K League veteran, the man behind the iBallEmpire. Just a dude who is very well regarded in all walks of the 2K community. You've done a ton, and I know this offseason's been a big one for iBall as well. But you got your start in another game, so why don't you just like walk the listeners through like where did ToXsiK come from as a gamer? How'd you get to the 2K League? All that good stuff.
Yeah. A long road, huh? Long story. I first, I got into gaming at a young age. Like, I was probably 10 or 11 years old when my parents bought me the first Xbox, the big bulky Xbox with the if you guys remember the old Xbox controllers that were like huge. They were like,
Oh, yeah.
oh my God, you can even like wrap your hand around it. That's when I first started playing Xbox. And funny enough, I was listening to you talk and you were saying that your favorite esport is Counter-Strike. And I actually got my first game that I played was Counter-Strike on Xbox. And I fell in love with it. Like I fell in love with it. I played that so much and then slowly transitioned into like Halo 1. And at that time, my brother was actually playing it. My older brother was playing it. He's a big gamer himself, so he introduced me to it. And a lot of my neighborhood friends would play it. So we would bring our Xboxes over to each other's houses. We'd hook them up on LAN, a LAN network, and we'd 2v2 each other in Halo 1. And that's where I really fell in love with like the Halo series and dove into that competitively. Started finding out about like some local tournaments around my area. Actually, my mom came home one day from school and she had a flyer for a local Halo tournament. This was when Halo 2 had just come out. And at this time, I'm probably 13 years old. So I went to this local Halo tournament, 13 years old. There's probably 50 kids there maybe. And I win this Halo tournament. I'm like 13. I'm like one of the youngest kids there. Come home with like $500. I'm like, man, this is what I'm going to do for a living. Like I figured it out, mom and dad. This is what I'm going to do. And, funny enough, it's like,
It's
18 years later, it's like, it's actually what I'm doing. So that's where it all started with me with Halo. Honestly, like I fell in love with that. I fell in love with the competition. I've always been, a very competitive person, played sports my whole life. Like, everyone has that, like that niche, that itch to want to just be the best at everything they do. And I've always had that. And it transitioned over to gaming and I started going to Major League Gaming tournaments. I believe my first one was like I was 14 years old, I think, and I flew to Chicago. I had to cry and beg my mom to fly to Chicago to play in a video game tournament. This is like 2006, so she's like, absolutely not. You're just not. It's not happening.
Not doing that. Yeah.
Somehow, I managed to let her. She put me on a flight, flew me out to Chicago, and I played in the tournament and placed like top 16 out of I think at the time it's like 256 teams that used to go and that was the story with Halo, man. Did Halo 2, Halo 3, then Halo started to fall off a little bit. Went and played college basketball for 4 years down in Miami at a school called St. Thomas University and always played 2K, like always played 2K with my teammates or like my friends. And funny enough, like I used to watch Ninja all the time and I used to compete with him in Halo. And at the time he was streaming on Justin.tv. There was no Twitch. It was Justin.tv.
Throwback.
And I used to watch him on Justin.tv play 1v1 Halo on Halo Reach. And he'd have, 100 viewers, 200 viewers. I remember sitting there in my dorm room one day saying, like, I could do that. Like, I could be entertaining and talk and just game. Like, who couldn't do that, And that's where I dove into streaming. I dove into streaming in 2K17. Really didn't play any Pro-Am, nothing like that. Was just a content creator. Heard about the 2K League. And honestly, I'll be like completely honest. When I first heard about it, I was like, there's just no shot. That's not real. You don't hear about a league like the NBA combining with a game. You just don't hear that, especially coming from Halo, right? Like we used to play tournaments in like hotel rooms. Like we didn't ever hear about like anything like that. So I found out about it, tried out, and I guess I got lucky, right? I got drafted to Cleveland season 1 and been going ever since. So
Been going ever since. Well, man, it's funny how many of us have the same kind of experiences from those earliest days of gaming. Like you know, anytime you touch on Counter Strike, you could open up a can of worms that's going to take me down a 45-minute rabbit hole, and we're going to suck all the time out of this podcast. But I'll tell you, I had the same kind of experiences. Like I was in the Counter Strike super early, like 99, 2000. I would go on IRC and meet these dudes, and these dudes I was gaming with were all from Queens, New York, and this was like way before social media. So I'm not about to admit to my family like I'm talking to dudes from Queens, New York every day, because they're going to think like that's some weirdo stuff, right?
Right.
And then I remember I went to visit my aunt and uncle in New York, and I just like peeled off one day. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna go meet up with this friend or whatever. I was still pretty young at the time, and just went over to Web 2 Zone, because these guys have been talking about Web 2 Zone since the beginning, and that was like the famous land in New York back at the time. And so I just needed to check that out in person. You know, all these old CRT monitors and stuff. And then the last point I'll touch on from what you just said is when Counter Strike came out on Xbox, I had gone from like having a PC, playing 1.6, then kind of went to school, just had a laptop for school, didn't really have the rig for Source when Source came out. And Source never really like scratched that itch for me the way 1.6 did. And I think like pretty much everyone in the Counter-Strike community still feels like Source is like the worst Counter-Strike that ever happened, to be honest. Even like those little flash in the pans, like Condition Zero, people like rank them higher. They might just be, you know, capping. But same thing happened. Like I heard it's coming out on console. I'm like, perfect. This is like an easy way for me to get in. You know, I just need to get a console. So I remember going out, buying like a brand new Xbox just for Counter-Strike to come out on Xbox, got like a cooling system, got like a little keyboard so I could type quick, because I didn't want to be frustrated, like, you know, having to type with the little X button and stuff like that. And it was just so janky. And like I played it too. I remember I climbed to like 200 in like the world rankings, but there was only like 30,000 players, you know, and that's total. So like who knows how many of them were actually active, but it was just such a small player base. And meanwhile, I'm watching the PC version, just getting all these patch updates, and the game's getting more and more refined, and I'm watching it on Twitch. And true story, I went to a rave for my like birthday. I can't remember what birthday this would have been, but early 20s. And I run into this dude, and we're going back to my place after with some friends, and we kind of hit it off with this random dude we met. And he's like, hey, can I come with you? I'm like, sure. So we're on the balcony and we're hanging out, and he's like, we're just talking. He's like, yeah, I'm actually like a huge nerd. I'm a big gamer. And I'm like, no kidding. I'm like, me too. And he's like, looks at me. He's like, Counter-Strike? I'm like, oh yeah. And he's like, dude, he's like, I got a whole crew from Toronto. We play all the time. We got an ESEA open team. You got to join us. And it was that conversation that like made me finally buy a gaming rig and get back into it. And then that got me back into the esports industry. So he actually, because now he's a client actually for us at MLSE. Wow. And he tells me, he's like, I feel a little bit responsible for putting you on this esports path, because I got you back into Counter-Strike after all those years. So yeah, it's crazy how we all went through that same stuff, you know?
Right. It is. I mean, if I didn't touch Counter-Strike, I probably would have never touched Halo, you know? So crazy.
Well, speaking of Halo, like, you know, Halo Infinite dropped right now. Like, do you feel like this has kind of recaptured some of the magic of those fun early like glory days? Because a lot of people are saying like this is it, like this is the one. How do you feel so far? I know I gotta imagine you're playing a ton of it. Yeah,
I've been playing it nonstop, honestly. Like, and I complete non-bias here, right? Like, obviously, I'm a huge Halo guy, and like, I can have the argument about the best Halo of all time, which is Halo 2, and then you know, but the game is great. Like, I've had so much fun on it, and this is really still a beta, technically, is what they're saying. But the multiplayer has been great. It's been a lot of fun. It's been smooth. It gives you that feel of like a lot of the, you know, the older Halos, like a Halo 2, Halo 3 vibe, but with its own twist on it as well as a new Halo. So it's not like, oh, it's so nostalgic, but it has a clean blend of old and new that makes it a lot of fun. Like, you know, little things in the game like the grapple hook where you can, you know, run and grapple across the map. Like, if you would have showed me that back in the day, I'd be like, absolutely not. That cannot be in Halo. But now I find myself like,
it works, right? Yeah.
I find myself looking for it on the map, because I'm like, yo, this is so much fun. Like, when you make a good play with it, this is like, yo, this is great. Like, so I think they've done a great job. Obviously, it's super exciting to see it, you know, back. A lot of my friends are competing. It's nice to see a lot of these big orgs getting back into it. I know like Optic and FaZe and a lot of these guys have teams, so that's awesome to see. And like the whole HCS, like they seem to have a clear cut plan for the competitive scene. And you know, competitive Halo was really like the foundation of a lot of competitive esports. Like, you know, before Call of Duty was Call of Duty and all these other games. So it's nice to see Halo kind of getting back on the right track and hopefully making some noise this year. So we'll see.
Yeah, I know. Like Adam Apicella, who runs Esports Engine now,
Yeah.
he was like that OG MLG dude,
Mhm.
kind of running the show, I guess, when day to day or like execution level when Sundance and those guys were kind of the owners of the business, and now they're making a huge move into it, right? They've been contracted
Yep.
to run this pro circuit, and it's a huge collaboration. I know ESL is involved as well, so that's exciting for Halo. I would say like Halo was that game I touched for just a little bit, like Halo 2 in particular. I was in university, and me and my buddy would play 2v2. And I remember like we would always hover in the high 40s, but like one Sunday we just grinded for like 12 hours and hit 50 for like one or two games. But then if you take a loss at 50, you're
Oh,
back
you
down.
drop. Yeah.
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 It kicks you right back down. But it looks
Hey,
like you said, it looks awesome, man. Like compared to
it
Battlefield, I
is.
started like watching
It is.
Battlefield, and it's like people are driving vehicles up buildings. Like
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
ragdolling in Battlefield
Yeah.
looks
I heard
super
about it.
janky. Like Battlefield looks like a beta. Halo looks like it's been in QA for 2 years. And I
Right.
Yeah,
saw
I
like I don't
agree
know.
with that.
I don't know if you know Green Skull from Toronto. He's like a OG Halo
Mm-mm.
content creator. Anyway, good dude. We've collaborated a couple times here, but he's like OG Halo dude, and he's been like beta testing it with them. He's in the credits. He's part of some small community of those like
Okay.
OG Halo guys who have been giving them feedback and play testing it for like 2 years now. So that's the way you got to do it, honestly.
Yeah.
And ship the game
Absolutely.
when it's ready.
Right. I agree. I mean, I don't know the exact time limit, but like, how long has it been since there's been a new Halo? Halo 5 was the last Halo that had dropped before Infinite, and that had to be probably 4 years ago, I would say. I mean, maybe even
Been a
5. I'm
minute.
not sure exactly. It's been a while, right? So like, I'm glad they took a little bit of time on it, and it's panning out the way it is. Again, this is only like a small taste of what they expect to give you on launch day, which is December 8th, I believe. So it's exciting, man. It's exciting news. Like, I know the first tournament is actually right around the corner. Like, I think they're doing something in Raleigh, North Carolina, like December
Mhm.
17th or something like that. So I might just go and see some of the old faces and old friends and just feel the vibes. Because again, like that, without that, I wouldn't even have gotten into 2K or got where I got. So it's great to see it back. I'm super excited for it.
It's actually perfect that kind of like helped guide your path. Obviously, like Shane talked about it earlier, the iBallEmpire that you
Mm.
run. You know what I'm saying? Front man for that. Like that's really a good look, and all these early games kind of helping to lead you on that path. But talk to us a little bit about iBall, man. What's going on with the Empire these days? How y'all looking?
Yeah, I mean, it's been, again, that's another long story, right? Like, started in 2K17 for those people that don't know. Really started off as just a small group of friends that, anytime you get on the game, you want someone to play with, you kind of want to rep the same brand. And that's how we started. It wasn't anything more than that. Obviously, once
Just
I
a
got into
tag,
the
just a
league,
clan
yeah,
tag.
that was it. I mean, even back
Yeah.
in the day, man, like with COD, or like, I don't remember if Counter-Strike had clan tags, but you could always do a little tag, and it was cool to see like
Yeah.
you're in a lobby with a bunch of your friends with all the same tag, and like
Yep.
it was bragging rights. What I mean? It's bragging rights. So like that's what we kind of formed in the beginning, and after joining the league and kind of seeing the projection of where 2K was going and content creation and everything else, I realized that there is no like big org in 2K. It's really an untapped market, I felt like. And I noticed a lot of guys had great personalities and maybe weren't as good as in content in certain areas, and I felt like I could help guide those guys and mentor certain guys and do that. And it's really become something bigger than I even ever expected it to be. Shane, you touched on it a little bit, working with like Cyclonic and other guys. Like, that design team itself that they've put together is like, I mean, they're
It's
great.
amazing.
Like, it's the work that they
It's
do is like
amazing, and it's like mostly volunteer, right?
absolutely. Like, I mean, I don't
Yeah.
pay any of them, but they care about it
Yeah.
just as much as I do. Sai's been around since the beginning of it with me, so he used to make little bubble letter like graphics for like Twitter kids, like, and now he's doing great work with NBA teams and you guys, and we've had probably 4 or 5 different designers land jobs. We have Jazz working
Oh,
she
nice.
worked for Duke
Wow.
University, and now she's working for the Atlanta Hawks. We've had our guy Alpha, who does a lot of stream work for some of like the most known NBA players for their streams. Anthony Davis, J.R. Smith. It's crazy to see where it's gone, the level it's gone. So, and without help from guys like Cyclonic, and it wouldn't be where it's at. But to kind of wrap it up quick, like Phil, yeah, with us, we're just continuing to stay focused. Trying to get the right guys in and kind of weed out some of the guys that aren't on the same wavelength as us. I think I'm still in that stage where it's like I'm still learning too, right?
Mhm.
I'm still learning like what type of people I want around me, who's committed, because at the end of the day, it's not easy. Like we're a startup still. Like, we're still trying to get off the ground, and We need people who are committed to their craft. We need people who are going to be committed to content and be good people, right? And so I'm always looking, but we have some really good faces right now that we're building on, and we're trying to expand a little bit, and we'll see where it takes us from here. So.
Yeah, your creative team is super, super legit. I mean, like I think most people know we work with a lot of freelancers. I actually just got the list because anyway, I just saw the list of all the people we've hired as freelancers over the 4 years we've been doing Raptors Uprising content, and people come and go, and then you hold on to the really good ones. And Cyclonic definitely, like when we put him on Six Tape, which is for those who don't know, it's like our weekly mixtape that we put out, highlights from our 2K League games. When we put him on Six Tape, it just like changed Six Tape, like took it to another level. And I'll tell you, whenever I am looking for someone, if someone comes through and has eyeball in their tag or their resume, that definitely puts them right into the interview stage, because you guys always have just super legit creative work.
And that even just hearing that, right, it's super humbling, because again, 2K17, it was a thing I started with guys just to play park with, right, and now it's actually giving people opportunities to land jobs and do things they love to do. So it's awesome to hear.
It's a legit brand that just started out of like, we just want the homies to, we just want to rep with the homies.
Right.
That's
right.
Dude, that's the best way for it to work out, because you can just look back at it like, damn, we really did this, and like you're continuing to like climb even further. Like that to me is legit.
It feels so unforced too, right? When it happens organically. Like our best content, like our best sponsored series have come like very, very naturally, like the Five House thing, like that was like, it just happened so organically. Some of the stuff we've done with Agent Zero, it's like literally like a meme will happen, and then like some people will start repeating something in the comments, and then I'm like, hey Agent, like what if we turn this into like a series kind of thing? And it always works out the best that way versus when you're just kind of like force stuff. Well, that's great, man. Good luck with iBallEmpire. I know, Kev, who's not here today, but who helped make the arrangements. He's been keeping super up to speed on all the tournaments and stuff you guys have been running. It seems like iBall is like very active this offseason, and it feels like this offseason like needs some of that, because it's felt a little flat, I think, compared to past years. And so let's transition into 2K League and where we're at right now. And so again, I mentioned to the viewers off the top that we would catch you up on everything that's been happening on this like few week hiatus that we've been on since we recorded last. So I think first things first, because we are the Raptors 2K podcast. So we, Raptors Uprising, have protected our now 5-year veteran Kenny Got Work, our first ever draft pick. And I don't know, like I think one of like 3 or 4 players who's still on his first team, his like season 1 team. Yep. Maybe the list is even less than that, but it just speaks volumes to Kenny's. Yep. Yeah, Kenny's ability and just who he is as a person, obviously. We also protected Dat Boy Dimes. So Dimes, we did that trade for right at the end of the season. Again, I was pretty transparent at the time that we were, tooling up to try to make a run in the ticket. I felt like we had worked through all the problems that we had earlier in the season, and bringing Dimes in kind of changed the dynamic on our team. And we had, Cook back on lock and everybody kind of playing their primary positions. And we saw some great things. We fell very short, and there's a Northcote episode coming up. We fell very short of our expectations, and when you watch this Northcote episode, it's heartbreaking for those fans of ours who were along for the ride with us, because we were dominating that series. Like game 1 washed them. Game 2 they got off to a really hot start. We were just and it's funny because you look back at the plays, like we were making the right plays, we were making confident plays, we were going for those oops and stuff like that, and we just kept getting like the bad 50-50 bounces. Honestly, I mean, a couple mistakes here and there, but it put us into a hole. We pretty much controlled the rest of the game, but the hole was just so big that it came down to the wire, and we ended up losing game 2. Same thing, game 3, out of the gate hot, just collapsed in the fourth quarter, and then got knocked out in the first round of the ticket. So, that was super sad. But the point is, we saw the potential of that team. And I'll say for me, Kenny has been an amazing leader. He was MVP, etc. But Dimes just has a way with floor generaling the offense that I just noticed right away. It just kind of changed things. Like, I think when Kenny can focus on his game on offense more and not worry about the rest of the floor, it unlocks his potential. Whereas Dimes really likes to work the floor kind of like a chessboard. And then Kenny, obviously, on defense, takes over the reins as well. So brought those 2 guys back. A lot of questions around who's going to be point guard, what roles are each of these guys going to play. I'll tip a little bit to what we're thinking at this point in time, but we also have a top 7 or a 7th overall draft pick this year, and that's our highest draft pick we've ever had. So whenever you're drafting that high, you want to make sure that, one, you're not going to be drafting that high again, so you got to take advantage of those picks while you got them. And then the last player that we protected was Type. So, Type's a guy I believe in big time. He's had his past in the 2K League. He's had his transgressions, I guess we'll call them. But I've seen, this guy's character and potential, and I know he's really focused on just bettering himself and growing as a person. And, this year when the team was struggling, he was always able to just make things happen for us and, put up big numbers on the box score, every game. So it just made a ton of sense to bring him back. And I'll say the early intel that I'm getting, and I'd love your thoughts on this, Talks, but the early intel I'm getting is just the way that this game is playing. It's going to be tailored to a guy like Type, who's a little bit more agile, less of a paint masher, a little bit maybe more dynamic of a center, and hopefully we can get him back to that like top defensive center in the league type of reputation that he had when we made the initial trade for him. And then as a reminder, we did the draft lottery, so that's where we got the 7th overall pick. We were like top 4 percentage to get the 1st overall pick, and obviously fell from there, which was unfortunate, but we move. And then the other thing that happened this week was the expansion lottery. So Dukes Gaming, the new Mexican franchise, has now locked up 3 players, and there were a couple huge trades that went down this week as well. So we're going to want you to weigh in on all that stuff, Talks. But I guess we'll start with what's kind of top of mind for you looking at that expansion draft. Like, what are you thinking about Dukes Gaming and the picks that they made?
Yeah, I mean, I think no surprise, right? With Mario going first, I think we kind of all knew that was going to happen. Given his past with them and just his relationship with them, we kind of knew that was going to happen. I think they did a good job. I mean, I don't want to be too critical of them, right? Like, they're new, so like we'll see how it goes. But I probably would have picked maybe 2 different people, just in my opinion. Like, I think when you're a startup team like that, like, you got to just take the most talented players on the board, right? Like, I think you just take the best players that are available, and BP's a guy that I think is obviously, like, he's had his transgressions too, right? Like, he's had his issues as well, but you can't deny his talent. He's a great player. So maybe I might have leaned towards him a little bit as the point guard pick, just because he's going to score the ball and like his overall skill level is there.
Yeah.
But I like the Beezus pick. Beezus is another guy. He's a veteran. He's a mature guy. Like, he's going to hold people accountable. He has the experience in big games. Obviously, just coming off a 2K League, finals. Obviously, they lost, but still to make it there is impressive. And he's played multiple positions before, so. I like where they're at right now. I think Killy has a lot of, he's got big shoes. Like, is he going to play point guard? Is he going to play shooting guard? Because we haven't really seen him at point guard in the league yet. And that's, as we all know, that's a whole different ball game when you're playing point guard in the league. And like, the team is your team, So can he handle
He's
that?
probably the 2, no? Because they got a 5th overall pick.
Right,
so I feel like they're going to look for a primary there. Killy will be at the 2.
We'll see for sure.
Yeah,
for sure. So, depending on who falls, again, like, I'm not super high in the draft class so far, but like, I think there is some really good talent. But I think, like, especially in point guard, like, I think it's going to be gone quick, So we'll see if they land someone. But for the most part, I think they did a good job.
I'm glad you brought him up.
I gotta chime in on that BP comment. Like, I think BP is definitely like as elite as it gets. But man, he's got a little Kyrie Irving in him. He's a little nutty.
Oh, you got a lot of Kyrie Irving in him. He got to sort that out. Like, Kyrie Irving's on a team still, right? Like, I'm just saying.
He is. If
Kyrie's on the court, he's an all-star. I'm just like, I'm not saying BP's an all-star, but
But I mean, BP was tweeting like he was going to retire initially, right?
Yeah,
like, I think those were antics just to get out of Atlanta, maybe. But
we know all that stuff. It's smoke and mirrors, like, how it goes.
I know it's just spur of the moment anger or whatever, impulse tweet kind of thing. But yeah, no, I mean, BP is a guy I've been like super, and Kenny will tell you, right? Like, when he came into that league, season 2, and he was dribbling, like, I've never seen anyone dribble, and I'm thinking, okay, I'm looking at the top 20 something point guards in the world, and one of them can dribble differently than the rest of them, and there's like tens of millions of people who play this game. Like, what is this sorcery, right? Like, even as someone who doesn't get on the sticks myself, I could tell, like, okay, there's something going on here that's, like it's like an instinctual ability that just like one dude has. And I get it too. He's also a grinder, right? He's always in the lab, just like working on that stuff. But I'll say, when we were in, was it Orlando? What was the Florida tournament? Where's Full Sail University?
Was it Orlando? It's Orlando, yeah.
Yeah. So when we were at that tournament, we just got eliminated, and it was like, the Friday night, it was like the venue was kind of peaking at that point in time, and it was Sixers versus, who was BP on at the time? Kings.
The Kings. He played for the Kings.
Would have been Kings or Atlanta. Anyway,
Kings. Season 2, he was on the Kings.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. It might have been season 2. Was it Orlando season 2 or season 3? Anyway, point
I
being,
think it was
he
season two
comes.
if we were in person.
It
Okay,
was
okay,
two.
right. True, true. Good point. So we're at that tournament, and I'm watching this dude, and he's just again doing crazy dribbles like I've never seen anyone do, and dominating.
Yep.
And I also knew he had already tweeted that he wanted out of Sacramento, right? He's like, I want to
Yep.
trade, and rumors were he wanted to get back to the East Coast, be closer to his mom, and in my mind, I'm like, and the GM's cooking. I'm like, oh man, look at this rare talent. Like, how can we make a move and get this guy on our team, right? And I was always talking to Kenny about him and stuff like that. And Kenny was always a guy we could slot into the lineup anywhere, right? So, Kenny was never an option to trade, but I knew that if we brought in a guy like BP and all of a sudden he had the ball, like Kenny could kind of fit in anywhere, whether two guard or
Yeah.
other, to be honest with you. But then they started double teaming him. And at that point, so it would have been the Sixers then just took off and just completely dominated. And it ended up being like a very lopsided win, even though Kings were off to like a huge start in that game. And so it just exposed for me that like just being a dribble god is not actually enough in 5v5 2K. You know what I mean?
For sure. I mean, again, like the talent's there. It's undeniable, right? Like the guy had his own 2K build named after him, named the BP build
Right.
that every single
Yeah,
guard was using in the game. So it's like,
He's a meta builder.
right. It's nice to have a guy that is like just that much of a grinder, but obviously I know, a lot of his issues. Another guy that I thought might have been taken was Goofy. Obviously 2K League champion. Maybe his stock is a little down compared to where it was in past, but you can't deny what he's done. Great talent.
He's another guy.
outspoken,
He's got his personality. Call it an ego if you want, but I also think he wears his heart on his sleeve, and you can tell that he's a good person ultimately. And I've had some really good exchanges with him, and I think he's shown like great moments of like being a leader and being a bigger person. But when you're a suitcase, like there's obviously something that that obviously sends a certain message, right? When a player with that much talent's moving around as often as he is, that obviously starts to catch up with you a little bit. And I hope nothing but the best for Goof. I'm sure he's going to get another shot, and hopefully where he lands, it really works out for him this year. But yeah, no, I agree with that.
I think the biggest thing for me is like just because like this is season 5, like even more people are going to be coming in and eligible. Like I don't know, it just kind of goes to show like none of these positions are like as good as you are. Like you guys just highlighted it perfectly. Like nobody's position is guaranteed or safe. So I don't know, like I think all those guys are gonna get drafted, they're gonna be fine, they're gonna end up in a market. But I'd still be like sweating a little bit. You know what I mean? Like you have to approach this with like a certain level of professionalism, like for the long-term run, if that makes sense.
Well, I mean, coming
that's
from a guy
ToXsiK
who
secret sauce, like ToXsiK, like that's your secret sauce. Let's be honest, right? Like that's how you keep getting so many opportunities.
I was retained 1 year out of 4 years in the league. You know what I mean? So like, if you're talking about sweating in the off season, brother, you're looking right at him. All right, so. It does. I mean, it obviously like a guy like Goofy, right? Like this is uncharted territory for him, right? Like he's not used to this. He's never been in this situation before. But maybe it's good for him too at the same time. Like he plays the game a lot in the off season. He streams a lot. And maybe it's just time for him to, kind of realize where he's at right now in the game and where he's at in his career with 2K, and he goes somewhere where he doesn't have to be the face and be like, the 2K League champion and bring all this other stuff and just be goofy and play the game and fill his role, and maybe that will help him out. So we'll see.
And that's huge. I think like I'm like absolutely convinced that you got to grind the game in the offseason. The players who take the offseason off, I think it worked for the first couple of years, especially when we were playing this like very like basketball sim league build. But as we're moving more and more to just like playing like retail and being able to bring some of those like glitchy retail exploits into the 2K League, you got to be grinding honestly in the off season. And we talked about that all year as far as the players that we would be scouting would be players who were active. And shout out Dimes. I mean that guy loves the game and he's been grinding this off season and having a lot of success. And we're like flush with Kenny Dimes and a 7th overall pick, so we got a lot of like potential at guard. But even just in our internal conversations, not to tip the hat too much to our draft strategy, but like Dimes is definitely doing the things that we need him to do to be our primary next year. And again, Kenny's so versatile and so humble as well that he's willing to slot into the lineup wherever it's going to set us up best for success. So shout out. And just to touch on the expansion draft one time, so listen, like obviously what Duke said and then demonstrated was that they were going to try to build for character, right? They were going to draft guys build a family. And I'm glad to hear you say that Mario was such an obvious pick because, I know there's a lot of people rooting for him. And, I don't know the game well enough to be able to say why it didn't work. I mean, obviously we know like the type of point guard that Fab is. But it's, it definitely, I want to see a guy like Mario come in from EU and, make a splash and prove that, hey, those amateur tournaments that we're doing in APAC and EU are actually a source of talent where we can take this league more international. So it'll be great to see with him being kind of like the face of the franchise now and obviously helping influence the picks that they make in this draft. It'll be great to see if he can click and hit some of the potential that I think everybody hoped he would have coming in. But the last comment on those guys is just like, how impressed I was with Rafa and Mario on camera. Like I actually, when I sent Rafa a congratulations message, I noticed from like way back before season 1, I had a DM from him that I just never responded to, and I had to apologize. I'm like, hey, sorry, I ghosted you back then, man. Like, you'll remember talks like the GM thing was crazy before that season 1. Like you had like Roger and Anthony and all these guys, like Grant, like Twitter was just buzzing. Like there would be like thousands of likes and like hundreds of questions and comments because everybody saw this like open access to the 2K League, and nobody knew how the draft was going to work, and they thought the GMs had all the control. So my inbox was getting blown up at that point in time, even though I was a nobody. And so I saw Rafa had messaged me, so I had to apologize and be like, dude, I'm sorry I ghosted you back then, but like welcome to the league and good luck going forward. But I was just super impressed by Rafa and Mario. Like they just seem like such genuine dudes, like very authentic vision. And I will say, I agree with you. Like I'm looking for the best talent, and I'm willing to take a risk on a guy with like a reputation or someone that maybe is a little bit of a project. You got to develop, from a professionalism perspective or just from like a humbling, their ego a little bit perspective. But egos blow up 2K League teams, and sometimes it's those teams that just like click and grind and work it out and start to play as a 5-person unit by the end of the season that have the success. You know what I mean? I think to win a championship, you need both. You need like just to have some of the top raw talent in the league and to all buy into the system. But you'll see teams overperform as a result of just being low ego and really working together, and then you'll see teams completely implode who have too much talent and too much ego.
Yep. 100%. You see it all the time. I mean, if you look at the Wizards, right? Before they went on this run where they won 2 years in a row, like a lot of people weren't giving them a good draft grade. They were saying, "Oh, Nudini's gonna play what?" Like, and then now everyone's praising him as the best power forward. Like before that, they were saying he couldn't run that, and before that, Dave Fry was a toxic teammate and all this stuff. But they were a bunch of guys who bought in, low ego guys, and they listened to each other, and you see the result of it. So
I've had a couple conversations this offseason. Sorry, Phil.
No, I was gonna say like 100% agree, but you know what? I'm kind of sad for that team because I wanted to see if they could potentially go for a 3-peat, but losing your point guard. I mean, like he's retiring further. Like I get it, school and stuff. Like, that's very important. I'm not knocking him for that, but just selfishly as a fan of the league, I wanted to see like them defend that 2-time title that they had.
Who didn't? Of course. A good storyline.
It's like, I got definitely, I'm disappointed that I won't have a chance to put a team together that might be able to reinitiate the rivalry we had in season 3. Because let's face it, we did not live up to those expectations last year. And, I had to like tell that, to some of the guys over in MSC when it happened. I'm like, man, I'm just kind of bummed I wasn't able to put a team together that could, carry on the rivalry, because I really wanted our get back last season. And obviously we just fell so short of even being, in the conversation with them. So yeah, it's unfortunate that we won't have another chance to see if a better Raptors Uprising team can get our payback. But all the best to Jack. I mean, that dude came in and he did it the right way. Super humble. I remember watching the video that the Wizards put out when they had like the the NBA GM and AGM come into the room and talk to them about their draft strategy. And I remember like the one thing they said was find the point guard that makes everybody else better. Not the pure scorer, not the one, not the ISO ball guy, but the one that makes everybody on the floor better. And that's what they found with Jack, right?
100%. 100%.
Yeah, dude. JBM Day 5 combination was sick. But you know what? Just to shift gears a little bit, we got the reuniting of another sick combination that I've always been a fan of. Mama and Walnut back together. What do you guys feel about this trade? Because I was reading Twitter and some people were saying the 76ers got fleeced in this deal, if I'm being completely honest.
No.
That's what I was reading. I didn't agree with that.
Not according to how I'm sizing up the trade market.
From the casual fan, right? Like when you see Yusuf or Walnut, like I understand why people are saying that. Just because it's like you see Walnut, he's He's a super outspoken guy, like super charismatic, MVP, Defensive Player of the Year. So like when you put that up against just Yusuf, like yeah, I can understand why people say that, but you have to look at what they also got, like what else they got. They got a first round pick and a future first round pick. Like they got a lot of value, you know what I mean, in return for giving up Dane. Obviously I was in Philly last year. So I personally love it. Like I mean,
Okay.
like Dane to me is like he's one of my best friends in the league. And being around him last year, I know it's a little different because like we're not in person besides the playoffs last year, but like Walnut hasn't been Walnut without Nadal, you know, without Mamba. Like they just coexist so well with each other, and like they bring the best out of each other. It's hard. Like you want to see them back together, and it's nice to see them back together in a different team, and you know, and with Crush at lockdown, like that's a scary three. And depending on what they do in the draft, like that could be a really serious team.
Those guys on land too, like on stage, you know, I think you nailed it. Like as a fan of the league, I just love those guys being together because I don't think anybody trash talks or celebrates more authentically than those guys. You know, when the two of them are like dancing on camera together, or Mama's doing one of his lives or whatever, like they're just so authentic. It's just so easy to watch and listen to those guys. So I agree. Now listen, I want to ask you. You know, there is consensus. And again, you know, I am the maestro, right? I don't actually know the nuances of the game. I can't watch Pro-Am and be like, that's the guy right there, right? Even after all my years of studying 2K, there's people in this community who have forgotten more about 2K than I'll ever know, that's for sure. And, you know, the intel that I'm getting is, you know, the way that we're shifting and with some of the unannounced but like worst kept secrets in the league that are coming as far as format changes next year, which, you know, we won't get into specifics, but I think anybody who's following the beat knows what I mean. You know, is like I know that their pick and roll has been like legendary, and you know, Walnut really more so is like in the paint kind of center. Like, is you know, do you think that it's going to work with the way that the meta of the game is going right now? Like, because Walnut's a guy that I super respect. Like, I've always admired him. I want him on my team, but you know, I don't know. Like, the consensus seems to be that maybe that type of 2K is not going to translate so well into, you know, where we're headed.
Well, what I'll say is like, and just from previous experience, right? Like being a player and going from off season to season is like most of the time what we expect the league build to be isn't what it is, right?
True.
So like, I mean, I've had, you know, I forgot what season it was, but they flew me to California to test the league build. So I thought I had a heads up on like, you know, what it was going to be like. And I think I was on the Magic at the time, and I was telling Jonah like, okay, this is exactly how it's going to play. And like, this is who we should go for. And of course, like it comes out and we all get it. And it's like, it was not even close to what I told Jonah it was going to be like. So
yeah, that was premature. I think that playtest session.
Right. So, I mean, it's hard to say like, listen, like, oh, okay, like his play style won't fit, because I just think those are two guys who just figure it out. I mean, every single season they've been with each other, they've figured it out, right? Like, you know, season 1, they were dominant before the patch, and then the patch came, and like, yeah, people said they weren't as good and they had to adjust, and they were still pretty good after the patch. They figured it out. And then season 2, you know, a lot of people said, you know, paint mashing was bad in season 2, and like, would Walnut be good and all this stuff, and they figured it out. They had like the best regular season record, and Nadal raised his game a lot, and they played really well. And then, you know, so, and then even season 3, right? Like they won the ticket, I think it was, didn't they? I'm pretty sure they won the ticket in season 3, if I'm not mistaken. I'm pretty sure they did.
Yeah. Where's Kev when you need him? He's on vacation today. He'd look that up for us.
They beat the Sixers. They beat the Sixers to go to for the ticket, I think, or it was either them or the T-Wolves or something like that. Look, like, you know, 3 years together and 3 playoff appearances, right? Like, so I think they're two guys who just know each other extremely well, and they understand each other's play styles extremely well, and like there's just a huge value to that, right? Like, so I think they're gonna figure it out. Do I know if they're gonna win a championship? But I don't know. We'll see. But it's gonna be exciting to see them back on stage and just like doing their sarcastic trash talk. And it's like, I've experienced that, right? Like I've actually been on stage and experienced it. It's like I can't even get mad at them when I look up and it's like I see Dane dancing and Nadal dancing, and it's like, I don't even know if they're trash talking me or what they're
It's the
doing,
best
but
kind of trash talk because you don't hate him.
It is.
You know,
right,
like it's the best. Like even
exactly.
standing on the other side, like and because him and Yus went at each other when Yus was on my team, right? I mean,
Right.
Yus had the famous "I'm a calm you down boy" interview,
Yes.
and like even like because there are times when I'm standing behind my guys and like Mel would be like up like just like barking at my guys and like I
Oh
just wanted to
God.
bark back, but I'm like, okay,
Yes,
Shane, you're the
yes.
GM, you gotta like be
Mhm.
professional. But with Dane, it never like it's always
Nah.
like really solid and effective, trash talk, but it never like
Yes.
gets under your skin,
Never. Never,
in
never.
the
So
spirit of the
it's
game.
gonna be cool. It's gonna be cool to see them back
Yeah.
together. I think they're briefly talking with Dane a little bit after the trade. Like he's super excited for it. Like
Of course.
they're such good friends. So it's gonna be cool to see them back together and playing.
I
And
think
Crushy
he's like
fits
a
in so well,
SoCal
it
boy
feels like.
too,
Oh
so
yeah.
he gets
Well,
to get back closer to home.
Crush is a gel guy, man. Like you throw him in anywhere, and he's gonna get the best out of his teammates. He's gonna be crushed no matter where he goes, right? Like he's gonna be a great communicator. He's gonna control the defense, and with a defensive center like Dane behind him, like in the IQ on just between them three, right? Like they're gonna figure it out. So it's gonna be a scary Kings team if they get two other people that fit in nicely with them. So.
That's what's up. Looking forward to. That's one of the storylines. Definitely looking forward to seeing how that one plays out. Like, but for yourself, Tox, what's
Yeah.
the vibe for yourself for season 5, bro? What are you thinking? Talk to me.
Yeah, man. Like I don't want to say too much, right? Because I don't even know, right? But I'll be honest with everyone, and I think a lot of people are starting to maybe get the hint a little bit that like I don't know how much more playing I got in me. I love the game, I love the league, I love everything it's brought me. But if I don't wake up every day wanting to be the best player anymore, then I don't want to waste the team's time,
Mm,
and I don't want to waste my own time. So like we'll see what happens next, right? I don't know, but what I will say is play. I'm not saying I'm not playing,
right.
but if I'm not playing, I can guarantee you I'll still be part of the league in some aspect, doing something and helping out in some way, and still having my hands on things. So we'll see.
Coach
And if
Tox.
yeah,
Coach
yeah,
I
Tox.
don't
I'm
know.
exactly.
throwing it out there.
I don't
Coach
know,
Tox.
man.
Come
I
on
don't
now.
know. I don't know.
Not confirming nor denying anything, but if rumors are to be true and there's no sixth man next year either, that also changes things a little bit, right? Like, I'm not afraid to admit,
Yeah.
and we interviewed last season, like
Mm,
you were top of my list,
yeah.
even though we kind of had our 5 figured out, because I mean we went into draft with 4 and we only needed a power forward, but you were a
Right.
versatile guy who, like, if we had problems at lock, we could put you into a lot of those secondary positions for
Mm,
sure. But again, you just brought like an element from a coaching perspective, like a good leader, I think, for the group.
yeah.
Obviously, your social reach and how big we are on content around here.
Yeah.
So
For sure.
yeah, you fit a lot of teams mold, I think, for a sixth man. And
Yeah.
if that sixth man is not an option for teams next year, then like you said, everyone's got to come in like really locked on playing and like having
Yeah.
a specific set role, and that's going to add another complicated dynamic for teams because we're one of the teams who have notoriously like changed our lineup consistently, other
Yeah.
than season 3 when it just clicked from day one and we just ran with it. Basically, like the easiest year for me as a GM, other than we had to deal with the Juan situation. But otherwise, we've been one of those teams that's constantly experimenting and moving people up and down the lineup. And this year, it's very apparent to us that we're going to have to come in with like much more of a firm plan. We always have a plan, you know what I mean? But like you said, the league build never kind of plays exactly like you expect, and things
Right.
ultimately change. Plans change. I think it's like a Winston Churchill quote. Planning is invaluable, but plans themselves are entirely useless because if you stick to a plan, as new information comes in, then you're probably not paying attention and iterating,
Yep.
to the best of your potential abilities.
Yep.
So.
Yeah. It's it's going to be interesting for sure. Like if there is no the whole 6-man thing, for me especially, right? Like I'm turning 30 in December, so in the gaming world, I'm I'm ancient, right? Like my hands are
Yeah,
not
welcome to
what
the
they
club,
used to be,
buddy.
is what they all say, right? Like I'm like the Udonis Haslam of the 2K league. So, um, it's gonna be interesting. I don't obviously last year didn't help me a lot. Like I didn't play much, and I'll be first to own up on that, and I know that. And so I know that, but again, like if I don't wake up every day loving the game and wanting to grind the game like I did when I first got in the league, it's like I don't want to take someone else's spot or have a team draft me because of my past of like, okay, who ToXsiK is as a player and a person when they're not getting that necessarily that toxic. I have a lot of pride in how I present myself and how I carry myself, and if I am drafted to a team, like that team gets me and all of me, and And then if I can't give a team that, then I don't want to do that disservice to them. So we'll see. Again, like I'm still kind of just playing things by ear and enjoying my time at home in the off season and being with family and just kind of relaxing. Honestly, like man, gaming Halo has been super refreshing. Like it's just been kind of back to my roots and like just waking up and turn on the game and make, man, like I just want to grind and have fun. So it's nice to do that. Because remember, like for a lot of us, this was our hobby. And our hobby turned into our job, So it's like, what's your next hobby? I didn't have another hobby. This was my hobby. So it's been a lot juggling that and figuring it out. So I've been doing a lot of like soul searching in the off season and just having fun and relaxing. So we'll see what happens in the next, couple weeks or months, and we'll go from there. I'm sure you'll hear it on Twitter or something, whatever I decide.
Oh yeah. No doubt about that. We'll definitely have our finger on the pulse, and of course, wishing you the best in all those endeavors, Tox, and of course for coming on the podcast too, man. This has been a great catch up and eye opening. I think our expectations for season 5 are through the roof right now. So it's a lot of good stuff.
Talks as someone who hires the personnel in and out of game, like you have so many opportunities. It might be the right time to just like focus on that next chapter, and I have no doubt that there's only more doors opening for you, and whether that's with an organization or honestly just taking iBall to that next level. I think you've got a ton of potential. And I just heard it, the doorbell has rung. You know what that means? The shawarma on ice has arrived. Shout out Uber Eats.
The West Coast
shout out
pizza
Uber Eats, not only for making
I don't want to talk about it.
For making the podcast happen, but also for delivering Phil and I lunch today. We appreciate you.
Real quick. I gotta ask something, because earlier in the podcast, I heard you say something about chicken on rocks or something like that. Like, what?
Yeah. So my shawarma spot, they call it on rocks or on ice. On rocks is on like rice, and then on ice is on salad. So
when I hear on rocks, I'm thinking, a drink.
Yeah. Exactly,
I was thinking the same thing, like ice cube or something. Yep.
But it's been that way since we were like 14 years old. This shawarma spot opened, and it's like, I don't know if you guys are Seinfeld fans, but when it opened up, it was called Pita Nutsy. It was like a little like nod to the soup Nazi in Seinfeld, and then as they kind of corporatized, they had to change it to Nutso. I don't know if I'm supposed to name specific restaurants. If not, we'll beep that out in the post. But that's like the go-to spot. It was like the hole in the wall that all my friends went to in high school. And now it's like franchised out, and they've got like 14 of them or something like that across the city. But if you're ever in Toronto, we'll hit it up, and you'll see what I'm talking about. It's some of the best shawarma I've had anywhere I've been in life. Talks, man, thanks for coming out. I'm a boomer. I got boomer reflexes, but I also have like 20 plus years of first person shooter in me. So if I get Halo installed, I got to upgrade my CPU, I think. But if I get that done in the next couple of weeks, I've been talking to my cousin who's a gear guy. I'm going to get Halo installed. I'll hit you up and you can carry me.
Let's do it. I'm with it, man. I'm on it all day. So let me know.
Phil, it's good to chat after too many weeks off, dude.
Yeah, I was going to say, man, it's nice to be back. I eagerly await to hear how you and Tox hook up for some Halo goes down the road. And another great 2K podcast, man. Big shouts to Uber Eats for, really making this happen. And of course, feeding us and really just, giving us a place to kind of talk 2K gaming and just chill vibes all around. It's always appreciated.
Yes, sir. And we'll be chatting more in the coming months. So more of these to come out more frequently, and we'll catch you guys on the next one.